Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's event. My name is Juana Estrada, and I am the event manager here at Latinas in Tech. If you please don't mind to just go ahead and add into the chat where you are joining us today. I'm currently here in the city of Chicago. It is extremely cold outside, so I am very, very cold in this cold weather that we have going on today. But for any of you guys joining us from sunny California, I am extremely jealous, or sunny Florida, welcome you all, but also just feel free to just add in the chat where you're welcoming us today before we begin today's event. I see that we have people joining us abroad. Wow, that's amazing. Mexico City, welcome, welcome. I see that we have Argentina in the house. Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much to all of us who are joining us abroad and across the country. We had an amazing turnout also as well from our community. So I want to just give a quick shout out to all of our members who registered to today's event. I am very, very sure you're not going to be disappointed by our amazing list of panelists. But without further ado, I'm going to begin. I know you guys are all anxious to meet our panelists. But before we start, as I mentioned, my name is Juana Estrada, and I am here, the event manager here at Latinas in Tech. We would like to welcome you all to today's event. Before we begin, if this is your first event here at Latinas in Tech, I encourage you guys to join our network. Now you may ask how to do so, right? To do that, it's very simple. All you have to do is go onto our website, which is latinasintech.org, and just become a member by registering on the website. And then once you are set, you are now part of our 1,700 plus network. And as you know, as mentioned, we have networks from all across the country with chapters over 20 chapters across the country, but also too, we have members globally. And as you meant, as the last slides had said, the way that we support our Latinas in our network is by providing you guys with events like today, right? Events that connect you to our members in our network across the country and around the world, but also to opportunities that can help you prosper and grow in your career and education. So whether that be looking for mentorship, recruitment opportunities, or mentorship opportunities, we have an offer that for you. So before we begin today, just some quick housekeeping rules. We ask that everybody revert to the chat and to our Q&A for questions. If you have any questions for our panelists or our speakers today, please revert to the Q&A tab, which you can find on the bar on the bottom right corner. And there we have somebody who will be moderating those questions and uploading those questions to our moderator today. But without further ado, I would like to introduce our moderator for today, Cruz Nieto.
Thank you, Juana. Good morning. I'm Cruz Nieto, and I lead the Sacramento chapter of Latinas in Tech. And Latinas and allies, thank you for joining us for our first virtual session of 2022. I'm honored to introduce our four panelists today: Eraina Ortega, Director of CalHR; Cris Rojas, Chief Deputy Director of DMV; Yesenia Reyes, Executive Leader, DEI Transformation Services, Accenture; and Christina Arizpuro, Managing Director, Technology Sales for Health and Public Sector, Accenture. I can't thank each of you enough for making the time to share your career journeys, your passion, your expertise related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the importance it plays in our workforce. We look forward to hearing about your experience, how those experiences differ from a public and private sector perspective, and the strategies you employ to share your DE&I goals. To set the stage for this discussion, I'd like each of you to take a couple of minutes to share the highlights of your career journey, where you started, how you got to where you are today. So let's get started with Eraina.
Thanks, Cruz. Hi, everyone. Nice to be here with you all, and really appreciate the invitation and looking forward to hearing the discussion today. I think very apropos of the comments about the weather, and those of you in the chat who mentioned how cold it was on the East Coast, I will say that my career journey started in Sacramento, largely from a desire to get back to California after spending graduate school on the East Coast for 2 years, and 2 winters was enough to let me know that I would rather come back to California. And so I was my first job here in Sacramento was with the Legislative Analyst's Office, and it's a well-known organization that is a nonpartisan fiscal and policy organization. And there I learned the state's budget process and really a lot about state government. And I think that experience really became the foundation of my career and my interest in remaining in Sacramento and really making my way through different organizations that were focused on state operations, state budget, legislation, and the like. And so I spent many years with the Judicial Council, which is a policymaking body for the trial courts and the state court system here in California. Learned a lot there about operations, worked on issues around facilities and court interpreters and lots of things having to do with really the operations of the court system. And I would say still largely focused on the budget, but then sort of started transitioning into really thinking about a lot of issues from the employer perspective, the court as an employer, and working on a lot of issues that courts face with their employees. And from there, went to an organization representing counties in Sacramento. And really that's where I started focusing very much on retirement issues, collective bargaining issues, workers' compensation, all those things, again, that public employers think about in terms of their employee base, which is really, as I think about my current role at CalHR, our employees in the state are the people who provide the services to Californians. And I think sometimes we think about the employees as being this kind of distinct group separate from the actual programs, but it is in fact the employees who deliver all the programs that people care about across the state. And so I definitely think I think this is true for a lot of people, that you don't really start out with a plan, but as you sort of get halfway through or towards the end, you start to have that path that you can see how one thing led to another, and it sort of seems like a plan afterwards. So I would say I'm definitely in that boat. Didn't really have a plan, but I've always, whenever anything interesting has popped up or someone has suggested trying something new, I've almost always said yes. And I think that's my approach to my career, is to say yes to anything that seems like a new, interesting challenge. And I've always been rewarded for taking that chance. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Eraina. Cris, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you. Good morning, and hi everyone out there. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I hope I am able to share from my perspective things that are helpful for others. I would start my career journey as a little further back than Eraina did. My family came here from Argentina, actually, when I was 3 years old. My father was an engineer, my mother was a chemist. And so in our family culture, education was always very much stressed and emphasized. And of course, my father wanted me to grow up to be a doctor, but that didn't work out. You've got to learn how to understand science and math and all that. And that wasn't my strong skill set. I did end up, we grew up in the Bay Area. My family has stayed in the Bay Area. Then I went off to school at UC Davis, so middle of California. And really, when I hit about 20, I thought, you know what, this gravy train isn't going to last forever, and I need to figure out how I'm going to support myself. And feeling like I didn't really have experience in the professional world. I had jobs, but they were more like in the school cafeteria, cleaning apartments, that kind of thing. But I didn't really, I hadn't had any job experience that I felt would set me up for a professional career. So I actually took a volunteer job with the state. I started as a volunteer at the Department of Parks and Recreation in their EEO office, their human rights office. And I learned there all the important things the state was doing. Now, granted, this was 30 something years ago, but even back then, EEO, affirmative action, all that was a big deal for the state, and the state as an employer was struggling. So I ended up staying with the state, I saw the advantages of working for the government, job security, but also a lot of flexibility in terms of making your own opportunities and taking on new challenges. And so for me, my secret to success was kind of what Eraina said. I never said no to anything. If people wanted me, gave me a strange assignment, why not? I'll do it, because then I'll know how to do it. That goes in the resume or as a job interview answer, but also it shows I'm a team player and that I'm constantly wanting to learn. For me, I am a continuous learner. I think it does go back to my family and how we were raised, but mid-career through the state, I did end up going back to law school, finished law school, and I was lucky enough to be able to practice law, employment law for the Department of Transportation. So I was able to keep my roots in EEO, personnel, all the things that personally interested me, and put those to good use as a representative for the state. After that, I was lucky enough to be able to get some opportunities for working on the non-legal side, but in administration and in really being in a position where now I get to make decisions about employees, employee engagement. How do we move the needle on diversity, equity, and inclusion? What does it mean? What does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean? It's an evolving theory. You know, now that I'm at DMV, and I'm so lucky to be here, I've been here almost 2 months, still very much learning, but I am now, as the Chief Deputy Director at DMV, I'm in a position to be able to create all these employee experience programs or oversee things that really will hopefully be gratifying to our workforce, increase our diversity, equity, and inclusion. And ultimately, I think not to be overlooked is this idea of belonging. And I think as an employer, if we can get our employees to feel like they belong, they have a place, they're valuable, then you're going to create a comfort level, psychological safety for them, but also a place where they want to stay and a place where they're engaged and go above and beyond. So, you know, I've done it. I've taken on some crazy opportunities, and I would encourage others to do the same. Thank you, Cris.
Thank you. And Cris, if you're not looking at the chat, a couple of shout outs to you. Cris is a born leader, and Cris is a great mentor. So you have some of your mentees, it sounds like, or folks that you've worked with.
Yeah, probably my mother and my sister are watching. No.
Well, I can only hope my mom gets on. All right, Yesenia, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Cruz. What great stories. I love what you're sharing. I think, you know, we all, you know, of the panelists will be able to find the places where we have similar ways of thinking and similar acts of courage, right? To say yes to the places that we're invited to, and to leave the door wide open, right? So that others can work through also and find their place of creative career expression in the workplace. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you. I'm Yesenia Reyes, and I've been with Accenture now almost 16 years, and I marvel at time. And so I'll share why I marvel. I started out of university in the nonprofit sector. So if I think about, you know, again, Krista, what you were talking about, you know, how we grow up, you know, that experience that shapes us. For me, I also started out in sciences, started out in pre-med, and just really quickly came to realize, especially through my university studies and work that I was doing, I was a Spanish translator at the public hospital at night and weekends, so I could work my way through school, that culture and, you know, and history and background and ethnicity and race has a lot to do with the way that we, that the world, right, you know, and the way that we show up in systems, how they work. And so that was a really big eye-opener for me in those formative, you know, educational days. And it led me down the path of really coming into the workplace, wanting to change that, right? It's like having a sense of, I didn't want others to struggle with getting the healthcare that they needed, with getting the jobs that they needed, struggling to convince their family to let them go to school, right? All of those, those constructs that, that can shape us, and especially as women, right? In our Hispanic culture. And so I came out into the nonprofit sector for 12 years and worked mostly in our low income, mostly Spanish speaking Hispanic communities to be able to bring resources, create awareness, bring our families, through the changing times. Technology was really shaping the way that services were being offered from a public sector perspective. The educational system, right, was evolving and adding, a lot more, parental involvement expectations into the school experience, while our society, our community was struggling with issues of gangs. And back then I was in Dallas. Today I'm in Dallas too, but this was in Dallas. We were having that those challenges with racial issues, with social issues, with justice issues, with other environmental issues that were affecting our area. And so I worked for 12 years in social services to be able to bring resources to families and really to show how everyone contributes to the change that needs to happen, right? Just because we were in low income communities didn't mean that we couldn't give time, didn't mean that we didn't have valuable experiences or talent to bring to the community so that we all rise together. And that brought me to, like Eraina and Cris have shared, right, different opportunities. I was able to move through organizations and in each move, raise my level of leadership, right, to be, the division director, the executive director, right, leading organizations. And so it was also a way for a young, Hispanic woman to be showing, right, and to be bringing along, right, the ability to be seen as a leader, to be able to be seen as an influential person, right, in our communities, in social services. So it was also an act of service, right? If I think about the seat of my soul, what motivates me, what inspires me, it's how can we be useful to one another? And those 12 years really opened the door to the way that I came into Accenture. So Accenture, as some of you may know us, may not know us, is a consulting firm, a technology firm. We also, we have a broad range of services, but we have a really strong public sector practice. We believe in the promise, right, to our residents, right, that we can bring innovation, that we can bring technology, that we can bring efficiencies and improvements to better serve, our communities and the people that live in them. And so I came into Accenture through that public service door, just really being able to see how the work that we did with as partners, right, that it was helping move the needle on the way that states could serve their constituents. And so that was a thread of service to me. For me, people, right, if you can, like I'm getting animated now because I'm like, there's parts of the story I want to tell you, but I also want to be respectful of time. How people organize, what motivates them, how do they learn, how do they organize, how do they make decisions, is what has interested me. And so I practice organizational change management on our large transformation programs. So when we're trying to change how we, what technology we use, we've got to bring the employee population along and use techniques that are meaningful to them, right? It's not a thou shalt, do this new process in this new technology system, but it's really about making it enriching, making it exciting, making it, something that is an enjoyable employee experience. Because in my mindset, again, going back to service, is if our public service employees are well, like they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel valued, they feel like their work is contributing to a greater good, then all day long, that's going to move out into the community, right? They're going to serve, their constituents, in a place of fullness and wholeness rather than feeling depleted. And so for me, that was the thread of coming into public service. I was in the industry for 15 years. and just recently, late last summer, decided that I can also evolve, right? Kind of open the door, walk to a new area, and really take what I was doing as a volunteer in my community with nonprofits at Accenture as a leader in our employee resource groups, in our I&D journey as a company, and put that into my consulting service toolkit. And so now I'm in our inclusion, diversity, and equity practice, the way that we work with our clients to continue to evolve that journey to this, this workplace that is meaningful to everyone and has opportunity for people. And so that's how I've expressed my career, and just appreciate being able to share more of that as the dialogue continues.
Thank you. We have a comment here. Love the seat of my soul perspective, Yesenia. All right, and Christina.
Good morning. Thanks everyone for having me today. These are phenomenal stories, and I feel incredibly honored and inspired to be with such a diverse panel. And when I mean diverse, just different backgrounds, telling our journeys and how we got here. So a little bit about my journey. I grew up in Woodland, right down past the freeway there in the past the airport before the Costco had shown up. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, and I studied recreation administration because I wanted to go into event planning. I received my master's in educational leadership because I wanted to become a dean of students and stay in college forever. After moving to Washington, D.C., I was hired by a company that created student information systems for higher education universities. I was hired because I had a degree in event planning and I understood the industry of higher education. However, I knew nothing about technology. But from that moment, I understood that technology could really play a role in people's lives and improving people's lives. At the time, we were focused on students, but little did I know this would grow into something else. Since then, I've been an individual sales contributor and a sales leader at companies such as SAP, IBM, Oracle, and Adobe. About a year ago, I joined Accenture to lead the technology sales team for the West. And my team is focused on helping public sector and health organizations find solutions such as improving citizen engagement and experience, modernizing old legacy systems because the people that ran them are now retiring, to reimagining human resource offices. What employee skills do people have today, but what skills might they need in the future? And what is the workplace going to look like in the future, because things are evolving so quickly. As one of a few women in technology sales, I was often asked throughout my career, what is it that you want to do? What is your goal? I struggled to articulate this due to fear and self-doubt and trying to balance being a working mom, but also having the desire to want to do more and knowing that I could do more. Once I was able to write down and articulate what I wanted, it read something like this. I've been successful in sales for the past 20 years, exceeding my quota by 100 to 165%, generating millions of dollars in revenue for company X, Y, or Z, and working with large teams. I'm ready to lead a sales team. This was a pivotal moment for me because I was able to create a personal mission statement. And at that moment, I also decided I'm going to share this mission statement with everyone and let them know what I'm capable of, what I have achieved, what the metrics look like, and what type of role I could and was capable of having. So like the other ladies on this panel, I started volunteering on external boards in my community, in addition to working full-time, raising a family. And from that, I started to gain some of the leadership experience that I needed that maybe I wasn't getting in the workplace to help round out my career. What I love about having a unique beginning and to where I have evolved to now is that central to the core of my life, I have gotten to work in public sector and really feel like the mission of what we do and what we do here at Accenture, as Yesenia was saying, is to really improve the lives of citizens every single day. And I don't take that lightly. And I love that I get to wake up and come to a company, that shows up every day and believes that. On a personal note, I am a working mom. My son is in high school. He's a senior. My daughter's in her second year at the University of Utah. I've been married to an incredible and patient and supportive husband for 23 years. And without them, being in my corner and being supportive of my career and my career aspirations, I probably wouldn't have gotten here today. My mother would love to have joined, but she definitely struggles with Zoom if I'm not in the room to help her. But I think my daughter may actually be out there. So shout out to my kiddo if she's there. So thanks, Cruz. Back to you.
Thank you, Christina. And thank you to all the panelists. These are really wonderful and diverse stories, all leading to great outcomes for each one of you. Given what we know about the demographics and hiring practices when you were starting your careers, I'm sure it was not all smooth sailing. Speaking from my own experience, I have seen the gap in representation of women and Latina leaders in senior and executive positions and levels. Let's start with Yesenia and then turn it to Christina. Is that true for the private sector as well?
There is, right. Yes, right. They are still, predominantly, kind of men in leadership and predominantly white men. But it is changing, and it is changing quickly, right. And it wasn't from one day to the next. I think there's been a slow but momentum building on the recognition, right. Of where we of how we need to evolve our workforce. How we need to be representative of just, the communities and the people that we serve, right? Whether in private sector, it's customers, and in public sector, our constituents, right? So there are lots of really hard pushes right now, right? Big changes in organizations happening to make changes, right? To bring diversity, not only from a gender perspective, from an ethnicity perspective, but also a focus on how do we create more accessible workplaces, right? How do we create, again, Cris talked about that sense of belonging, where our LGBTQIA community is also embraced in the workplace, able to find and grow in their careers, right? We're bringing a lot of awareness to how we show up as humans in the workplace, and addressing mental wellness and mental health in the workplace again, right? Neurodiversity is real, and the more that we recognize the reality of what the human population looks like, and the more that we put intention around creating ways that we can still be meaningfully contributing in the workforce, what that springs and spurts innovation, right? That really does start to change the game on what companies can accomplish. And I think there is a lot happening around that, the growth in commitment and the real actions and results that our private sector is yielding in this space.
Yeah, I would add, it is getting better. And we have a lot of wonderful men at the highest levels leaning in support of Latina women and making sure that our voices are heard and that there are clear paths for us to succeed. This type of change and cultural creation of a culture really starts at the very top, right? It starts with the leadership. And at Accenture, we have very publicly stated goals saying, by the year 2030, we want to have 50% women in the workforce. We have programs for, women who maybe stepped off the career train for a couple of years to stay home and raise their kids, and they want to come back. We have a path to help work with you on that. I'll talk about our apprentice program a little bit later on, but we also have goals for pay parity. So in other words, we're looking at men and women doing the same job and making sure that they're getting paid the same, which hasn't always been the case for us, right? We've created some communities within Accenture to make diverse voices feel heard and helping with the culture to make you feel included or a part of it. We have, we call them employee resource groups. We have one for Latinos. We just launched one for Native Americans. We have one for the LGBTQ plus community. And these are safe places where you can meet with leaders that are part of Accenture to talk about what your career goals are, what your aspirations are, what concerns you have. And I've never personally been a part of a company that's taken such an interest in this. And it's because it generates to better performance, it generates to better value for our shareholders. We now have good, solid metrics that say when we are a diverse workforce, and we perform better. And, you know, I think 20, 30 years ago, equal opportunity and affirmative action started this conversation, but we needed to collect more and more metrics. Well, now we have the data, and the data says, right, if you have a diverse workforce, you're going to perform better. So I am excited about the changes that are happening.
Thank you. It's great to see the stand-up of ERG groups and all the support and the awareness from organizations like Latinas in Tech. You know, that's really creating a lot of interest, awareness, and actionable items. I know that was one of the things that drew me to Latinas in Tech, you know, and hearing, you know, that Latinas, depending on the data, again, it's roughly 1% to 2% of Latinas are represented in technology. So making us the least represented group. We know there's lots more work to be done there, but we're building a community. And if you're not tracking the chat, there's a lot of sharing of LinkedIn and a lot of connecting that's happening. So I think that's wonderful. Given, you know, what we've heard and what we know there's more work to be done in the DE&I space. And I'd love to take a deeper dive into why DE&I in the workplace is so important. So who would like to start on that topic?
I'd be happy to say a few words if that's okay. So I think for a long time, the way we had to sell DE&I, right? We had to convince people that there was a business case for it. I mean, let alone that it's, of course, the equitable and the right thing to do and all that noble stuff. We also had to say, hey, look, there's a direct correlation with diversity in a company and innovation. And there's a direct correlation with diversity and employee engagement. And if you're an employer that wants to attract, say, Latinas in tech or whoever, underrepresented groups, you're going to have to represent yourself as an employer that cares about those things. And you're going to have to be really clear as an employer what you bring to the table in terms of diversity. It has to be spoken, I think. It can't just be kind of something inconvenient that we don't want to talk about because it might be awkward. It has to be spoken and it has to be out there. And I think what you end up getting is loyalty, partnership, collaboration, and also, of course, extra benefits for the employer as well, because you're reducing attrition, you're increasing retention, and you're getting this loyal workforce base that you can then look to placing into the leadership pipeline, making sure people are developing with that culture in mind, and then continuing to lead the organization in those efforts. So that's just a short answer to your great question.
But I'll add to this, you know, I think we also have to realize that, you know, that where we are today in the world is, you know, our, you know, again, as consumers, as constituents, right, you know, kind of wherever we sit, you know, in relation, right, to a service, you know, there is much more information. Our behaviors, you know, have really changed over, you know, just, you know, over the course of several years, where, you know, where we want to be able to understand, you know, where are we giving our business? What do they stand for, right? The values, you know, none of us while we all may have, what we believe in, how we act, right? The conversation is about how do our behaviors impact the climate? How do our behaviors impact our communities, our society, right? How do our behaviors, right? In what we do as consumers and constituents, right? Just what impact is it having beyond ourselves? And so that is much more visible and just in our everyday thinking, that employers can't ignore that, right? It's like, no matter where we sit in industry, we've got to recognize that, that people want to understand more about their services and, their goods and services. They want to, some are going to be very justice and socially inclined, right? In how they consume services. Others are going to be motivated by purpose, right? There's just the motivation and the will to now take your business to someone, who aligns to your, to an individual's values. It's just much more prevalent, right? So having inclusion, diversity, equity is really about meeting the world where it is today, which is much more transparently, much more purpose and value driven, right? And much more as a know me, right? So that I can, create loyalty to you, versus in days past, it was a little bit the other way around. So, it's part of the modern way of thinking, of acting, of behaving, and consuming information.
Cruz, I would add in just the timing is good to be able to connect a particular project that we've been working on here at CalHR and within the state, is going back to Chris's comment about the employers making a statement of their values and making it clear what they intend to do, what the intention is as an employer. And the governor and Governor Newsom and the first partner have recently announced the signing of the Equal Pay Pledge for the state as an employer. So the Equal Pay Pledge is something that the first partner had launched, and dozens of private sector employers have signed that Equal Pay Pledge, and now the state has done so as well. And we have a what we call the women's earnings in state civil service report that we publish every year, and it was published today, and really provides a deeper dive into the pay gap for state employees in California. The good news is that the pay gap has narrowed over the last decade. It was 21.3% in 2010, and it's 14.3% in the 2020 data. So a good trend overall. But then when we look deeper into that, you see that the median for women is 14.3, but for Black women, it's 20.4. For Latinas, it's 22.7. For Native American women, 25.2. So there are significant challenges. And I think, a lot of what we're trying to do is really look closer into the data to understand what strategies do we need to take on, what do we really need to do to address those gaps. A big part of what we have in state service is what occupation and what bargaining unit you're in our system really drives where you fall on that median pay level. And that's where I would tie it back to the kind of overall diversity question. It's very hard in our state civil service system to close the pay gap without diversity within each of the occupations and the bargaining units. So if we have women of color concentrated in the lower paying bargaining units based on the particular occupations there, we will not be able to close the gap for women of color. And so really, I think digging into the data really gives you a sense of what you would need to do as an employer to address those issues. I'm excited that we have an administration that wants to do that, but we have significant challenges that we're going to have to look at all kinds of issues about sort of how people are segregated into different occupation types and what the kind of issues we have at the educational level. Big challenges ahead, but very excited that we're actually taking it on and really thinking about it as an employer. We have 230,000 employees in the state of California, so it's a big deal. It's real impact if we can close that gap even further.
Thank you, Eraina. Anyone else want to add? All right. Looking at the chat here, there's more connections being made. There's some interest in fintech and also in the medical technology space. So I think, there were a couple of things that our panelists shared that I wanted to highlight and touch on. I think Yesenia definitely, talking about services and the importance of having diversity. And, when I look at our panelists and we're all in a, service provider capacity for our residents, right? So we're either doing services that we're providing or we're in the space of product development. So, the direct tie-in into understanding, our residents that we serve. And when we're doing that development, having that diversity represented in that development, right? So that we can best serve and meet, to your point, meet our residents where they are. I think that's one of the big highlights and the big benefits of having a diverse workforce. So let's move on to, now that we kind of have a landscape of what we're dealing with, where we are, and some great metrics. And thank you, Eraina, for sharing that. Let's talk about some of the strategies that you're currently employing to get us there, and additional conversations centered around what else can we do to meet those gaps. Who'd like to start?
Well, I'd love to start. But I'm in a government position, and so this might not apply to everyone. But you know what? It probably does apply to everyone now that I think about it. Data. Just what Eraina was saying. I recently came from another agency where we were very concerned about our numbers of underrepresented folks in leadership positions, and so. Of course, the answer was, let's go recruit, let's increase our recruitment, let's go out to schools, which is a fantastic approach if that's your problem, if you're not getting those folks to apply. But data will tell you where your problem is. Data will tell you if people are not applying, or maybe data will tell you, hey, they're getting screened out after the app review, or maybe they're getting screened out after the interview. All those things will tell you a different problem that you're having, right? So I think data helps us be more focused and more effective in where we need to focus our efforts. But I really think DEI and B, I'm going to add the belonging, is all about a culture shift and making sure that folks understand it's a continuous conversation. It's not the once a year signing off on the sexual harassment prevention policy or the EEO policy. It's a continuous conversation. How do you integrate DEI considerations into the day-to-day operations? When we look at HR for the state, there are some things we can do. We can control what questions we ask the panel. The candidates. We can ask managers and supervisors, a diversity question or an EEO question, because then we're sending the message, this is important to leadership here at the department. It also is a great opportunity for them to refresh themselves on the basics of EEO and diversity. But I think the message is very important too there. Look at your vacancies. Are they higher level? Think about changing the level, or giving someone an opportunity for an apprenticeship program, or go out to adopt a school. Sometimes you say, but there aren't Latinas in tech. So how am I going to recruit Latinas in tech? Well, let's make some, let's get a pipeline going. Let's work with schools, high schools. Let's get them interested. All these things we can do as an employer. Yeah, we might not see immediate results, but we can see results 10 years from now. Hopefully I'll be retired by then, but then someone else can see, those long-term efforts and that vision is really what we need to do. It's an investment, and we need to be investing in long-term, even if we're not going to see it and we're not going to get the credit for it. Other things we can do: eliminate bias in screening, take names off of applications, have a third party review the application. That way you're not even, you're keeping an arm's length there. Coaching and mentoring for folks, and really, again, with that culture of let's help each other. I'm not in tech, but I work in what is essentially a technology department. The DMV here, Department of Motor Vehicles, is all about technology. It sneaks up on you. It's like you can have a career overseeing technology without actually, overseeing technology programs and projects without necessarily having that tech experience, in the nitty gritty. So it can sneak up on you. You can be somewhere with transferable skills. So I've been to other departments, and my HR background, my employment law background has really helped look at that from an enterprise-wide basis, not just from one department's point of view, but also for the individual. And I'll stop talking after this. Also for the individual, a lot of it is, it's up to you. It's up to the person seeking the opportunity. Very rarely does someone just get tapped on the shoulder, and very rarely is someone recognized. It happens, and that's lucky if you do. But I'm kind of from the school, like, make your own opportunities and make your own situations. So ask for stretch assignments, ask to join a group you wouldn't normally join. Maybe a different division needs some help that you can, kind of do a stretch assignment with. Get FaceTime with people that you normally wouldn't run into in the organization. Of course, FaceTime now has a different connotation, but just get in front of folks that might be keeping an eye out for an emerging leader. Create a special project for yourself. Of course, continue your training and your education, and you will stand out. But you've got to be your own biggest proponent for an opportunity.
I love that, Cris. Because you hit it both from what do we need to be doing organizationally and what do we need to be doing personally. And so as you were speaking, I was writing down, right? We lead with data, right? What do the numbers tell us about our organizations? But we really need to supplement it and look at it, as leaders in organizations, is what are the beliefs and behaviors that, that start to show up, that create the barriers, right? Where are we creating distance versus really kind of taking those down, making sure that we hold leaders at all levels, right, accountable to change beliefs and behaviors. And that necessitates, the need to create environments where we can call out the behavior, where we are safe, right, to be, when we're in coaching, that there is a little bit of safety to be able to evolve our behavior, right? If we're going from, this one way to the next, that on both sides of the equation, right, we want to change the culture in the right direction, but we also need to recognize that needs an environment where that is possible, and that people are not fearful of where they are on their DEI journey, right? Because it's all a journey, right? There's no one right path. The other pieces that I think we can do as organizations is to amplify the lens, right? What are adjacent skills that that really start to accelerate the ability to get our people into those roles, right? That will bring them into leadership roles. And ask ourselves, we've said it, once or twice now here through the conversation, but what does it mean to really have a learning culture? It is one thing to have a once a year or a learning management system that's populated with a bunch of, trainings that we take, versus truly developing a learning culture where, where learning and practicing and, and getting better is part of, the behaviors that we exhibit in the workplace. The other piece is non-traditional channels, right, of creating pipeline is, and I'll speak a little bit from my experience in public service, and I also, see the shift having in private sector where everyone is learning, right? The traditional ways of learning, of going to college, right, graduating, that's different now, right? Learning is available in so many different ways that are not through only this very, traditional education system. Plus, it's also increasingly, not affordable for, for many of those of us that are going to be looking for it, for advancement opportunities. So how can we as employers and leaders and managers start to recognize that learning happens everywhere and that we understand how to translate skills, right? And talk the language of skills versus, versus credentials, so that we don't miss the opportunity to see someone that is really talented, right? That is able to drive outcomes that may not have a traditional educational background. And then visibility, right? Our voices, when those employee surveys come out, like, we've got to be truth tellers, right? To our leaders about what is really happening and what we really want, to see in the workplace. Because one, and I guess I've always been the proponent of, things can't change overnight, right? Very few things in large organizations can change overnight. But if there's consistent feedback, from our employees, and our leaders are genuinely looking, right, to make meaningful change, they will meet somewhere, right, kind of on that journey. And so consistent feedback, honest feedback, actionable feedback is something that's really important, not only to drive the culture, but also to help people grow, learn, and feel like they can reach for their stretch goals. And so I'll end on confidence. For every woman sitting out there reading, job skills, right? The job postings, is you can do anything you set your mind to, right? Someone has to write a job description, but that doesn't mean that you have to opt out of it. Go for it. Nothing bad happens when you don't get the interview, right? Like, don't take it personal. It's a numbers game, right? So keep putting yourself out there in a way that will help you just learn the tips and techniques of interviewing, amplify the network, get your voice, get your vision, get yourself out there in a way that doesn't diminish your effort, right? Because nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Thank you. I have a few follow-ons, lots of comments agreeing with what you ladies have said so far. There's a lot of interest, comments related to, the deleting names off the resumes. There's comments related to that, in support of that. Comments related to, some folks kind of believing there's still kind of this myth around all the roles and careers that you can have in tech. Some folks feeling like it's previously very engineer based. And so, we've talked about that in Lit, and something that, we can do to create more awareness, to really, publicize the entire tech ecosystem, which can include anything from public relations and business analysis and project management, right? You're still in tech, but you're not in that, what you would consider really a systems engineer maybe type role. There's comments about, definitely a lot of support for data and metrics and having actionable strategies around that. So I'd like to have a little more conversation around that. I'd like to hear, Eraina, from you on the statewide perspective, and then maybe Christina from you as well. I think there were a couple of things that Yesenia touched on, that the traditional, college degree is not the only path. And I know you and I have had conversations about that. So I'd love for you to talk about that in a minute. Eraina, can you maybe share with us a little bit about, Chris's point on the data and the metrics? Will we see, or are conversations being had at the state level where we'd like to capture those metrics to get a baseline and see what areas, maybe we can target in terms of changes in recruitment, and how we can, maybe support some of that hiring of diversity? Is any of that conversation being had?
Yeah, thank you. A couple of things, and I also want to, maybe I'll start with this because I think it'll come back around to your specific question. I saw somebody made a comment about institutionalizing the DEI and how to make it that it's an ongoing, and you have to address it on an ongoing basis, and how do you really make it part of an organization? And I think that one thing that I've seen across state government, when we think about all of the different state departments who have their own directors and their own HR departments and their own leadership, is that DEI is often a side project for somebody. So somebody in HR has DEI, has an engagement survey, has some element of the things we're talking about as something they do in addition to their job. And I think that's a shift that I'm seeing more in state government, is the understanding that it has to be a primary responsibility, that every department has to be looking at those issues and looking at its internal culture and focusing on those things as somebody's primary responsibility. So I think there's been a lot of change in that, in thinking around that. And I think where the state is trying to make it more institutional and make sure that every department is doing that is through, there's been a creation of a chief equity officer in the government operations agency. That position has not been appointed yet. I suspect it will be in the coming months. And that person will have primary responsibility for policies and programs that are focused on hiring approaches, contracting and procurement approaches, and really institutionalizing some of those policies so that departments are required to make those, to make the effort within their departments and within their own programs. And then just taking that back to the data question is, I think Chris made this point very well about not knowing some of the data that we don't know within state government is, we don't have a good sense of what our applicant pool looks like versus who gets an interview, gets selected for an interview versus who gets taken to the next level. We don't have a good sense of where we lose, where did we not have any diversity to start with, or where did we lose it along the way in the process? And I think that's where we're really focused right now, is backing up to the beginning, trying to start putting mechanisms in place to track that information from the beginning, to be able to look at where do we need to target our interventions. In the past, I would say a lot of the efforts have been vague and broad. So the answer would be, we need to do a better job of recruiting, as Chris mentioned. Well, what does that mean? And who are you recruiting? And, looking at breaking out the racial and ethnic data that we have and looking at where do you have gaps and what, should you be targeting particular schools or programs or any of those things. So I think there's been a real shift to understanding that. And now we need to take the next step to implementing those processes. And so I think that's certainly where CalHR is. If you look at the January budget proposal from the governor this year, there are quite a few initiatives under the rubric of something we call California Leads, which had this overarching mission of having a workforce in state government that represented the diversity of the state of California. And so under that kind of big picture goal, we have several initiatives around data collection and analysis, targeted strategies. We do have a proposal for a pilot project, and I saw there were sort of competing comments on the anonymous hiring idea, but we are planning to pilot an anonymous hiring approach where we would mask names. And honestly, I think we're talking about masking schools' names and addresses. And so you would really just have a person's job history and skills. So that'll be an interesting pilot to see how that changes the hiring process as people go through it in the state. And then another item in there that I would mention is working with that chief equity officer is developing a strategic DEI plan for the state, so that it's really thinking about how do all the departments participate in a DEI strategy. We have a lot of employees who work in state government move around a lot in their career. They move from department to department. That's how they tend to move up in their career, is moving to new departments. And I think that we do not do a good job of having continuity. So your experience as a state employee can be very different department to department. And I think that is particularly true for people of color. And I think we need to do a better job of having a strategic approach to DEI, so that everyone in every department is respected and has that feeling of belonging, and engagement is being measured, all of those things. So those are the kind of having that strategic plan and thinking about it across all departments is kind of where we're headed.
Thank you, Eraina. That's very exciting. I'm thrilled to hear all those initiatives are currently underway. Appreciate that. Christina, would you like to add further and comment about the conversation related to education?
I would, thank you. one of the initiatives that we read coming out of the governor's office was that they want to have 500,000 earn and learn and apprenticeship opportunities within the state. And we are very excited at Accenture because we would really like to play a big role in that. One is because we think it's needed. Secondly, because jobs at Accenture can often be life-changing for those of us who spent time maybe at a community college, for example, like I did. And one of these exciting programs that we're rolling out is this apprenticeship program, where we are looking to really diversify our talent pipeline. And the goal of the apprenticeship program is to partner with community colleges and to attract a more diverse workforce. And so we will actually pay you. We will put you on an Accenture project, and you may do, your day might be to help us staff and manage a project, to help us look at tasks and milestones. It could be for looking at data and trying to help us identify patterns so that we can help make business decisions or help our clients make business decisions. It may be to look at cybersecurity risks. Where are their vulnerabilities? And the idea is that at the end of your engagement with us, that we would hire you full time. And this is, a big shift for us, right? I think to Ereina's point where she was saying, we're going to mask the schools that you came from and the name. If you think back to when I was going through the process, that was a really big deal, right? Where did you go to school? Now I think we're all realizing that with COVID, it's accelerated retirement. We're hearing about the Great Resignation. My mom calls it the silver tsunami. She says, everybody who was thinking about retiring has accelerated retirement. And so we have no choice but to look at other ways to, improve and diversify our pipeline and to really cast a broader net. I interview a lot of kids graduating from college coming into Accenture, and I love that role because I learn a lot about them. And one of the things that I'm often asked by Gen Zers is back to, well, what is our mission statement? How do you apply it? I'm looking for a purpose-driven or a value type of company. And I think those types of question and answer is, they're looking for a good fit as well, right? And so these are important parts of the discussion, and they're important, as we reach out and we try to make a connection and draw people and draw talent, to our organization. So we're really excited about the apprenticeship program.
Thank you, Christina. All right, I want to make sure any of our panelists, I want to give you the opportunity to, share anything that hasn't already been discussed.
Cris, I want to come back to the comment or the talk around tying our beliefs, our behaviors, right, the data to business strategy. And again, this is where where we can really move the needle, even if some of our organizations aren't aren't in the maturity journey, right, to be able to be wholly integrated DEI into the business strategy. We can do it for ourselves, right? We are leaders, managers, supervisors. Is how do we begin again to create that ground swell of movement to say, I know that I'm held accountable in my role for these outcomes, right? Wherever we sit in industry. And I'm going to add these priorities as well, right? So how do you, again, you start to really behave in a different way and to demonstrate the value that you put on DEI and belonging and wellness and all of the other dimensions of just, a fulfilled employee environment. And right, when we're talking to, the person that we report to, we're asking questions. If they're not the ones bringing it up in the conversation, then let's us be, the voice to the question, what is your thinking around our succession plan, around diversity, around inclusion, right? Really be able to just, start the conversation somewhere. Often we wait for the conversation to be from the top down. Let's be the leaders that you and I are all brought up to be, right? The first in the door through many experiences, and start those conversations so that our leadership also recognizes that we are going to be different leaders, right? That we are the ones that are going to bring, real change into the workplace. And again, that creates energy and momentum and starts to distinguish us, right? Kind of from just doing what's required.
Thank you, Yesenia. And actually on that topic, of what we can do for ourselves and what the attendees can do for themselves, right? To better position them for these roles that they're seeking. One of the things that we often talk about in LIT and we support immensely is mentorship. Curious on any of your thoughts as panelists in terms of how you would recommend, folks approach seeking, finding a mentor, your approach to mentorship. Anything you can share on the topic would be great.
Yeah,
I can.
Oh,
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. No,
No, go
please.
ahead.
Okay, sorry, we're so polite. I can share my experience at a very large department. We did roll out a mentorship program, and we were very successful. It was very structured, so it was meetings once a month. The employee has assignments, so they have to, produce their resume with the first meeting and then have conversations about their future and all of that. It was very structured, and I think it was valuable. I think it's always good to, befriend or associate with someone maybe at a higher level that can kind of pull you along and give you some hints. But I do think that sometimes we get confused between what a mentor is and what a coach is and what a sponsor is. And I think sometimes people have the expectation that a mentor is going to find them a new job. And that's not what a mentor is for. A mentor, the word comes from teacher. So it's somebody who teaches you, kind of maybe the culture or maybe specifically a skill. But I think when we ask for a mentorship program, we're asking for connection. And I think people do feel a lot more satisfied at work when they do have a personal connection and maybe know that there's somebody out there at a different level that they know is looking out for them. But there's other programs too. You can do like they do at the high schools. You can match people up with a, freshman and junior, just to have that association with someone, that friendship with someone. But to me, sponsorship is really what I think people, when they hear the word mentor, think of. They think of someone who's going to see them, who understands them, and who's going to take them along. And that is so valuable, and it's so hard to find. And if you have somebody like that, congratulations. But that is, maybe something we need to consider when we're looking at bringing folks along. Maybe it would be nice to bring hundreds of people along, but maybe we just start with one or two, and maybe we spend time and take it upon ourselves to spend time with different people and kind of be that sponsor for folks. But I don't think that's something you can formalize necessarily.
Yeah, I would add, Cris, that's a really good point. And I would add that, you have to build out your own board of directors. And so what that means is, you find, the 3, 5, 7 people who are your fans and that are going to build you up, and they're going to give you the tough advice. They're going to comment on your soft skills. Do you not let people finish sentences? Do you, have a saying culturally that you grew up in your house saying like and oh, and maybe that isn't something that is valued in the workforce. And so they're willing to tell you that. And I agree with Cris, a mentor is very different than an advocate. right? An advocate is the person who is going to help you move ahead. And it is critical that you have those people. And they might not necessarily be Latina women. In my case, throughout my career, they were mostly white men and mostly men, because I was in a role that there weren't a lot of women in. In fact, I think, the first 5 years I spent in sales, the whole team had stay-at-home wives, and I was pregnant running around. So I think it's really important that you are, the master of your career and you seek these people out. At the end of the day, you can control two things. This is a saying in my house: you can control attitude and effort. And that's really what you have control of. And I think if you build out, this board of directors, they will help you along the way. And they'll also, advocate for you as well.
I'll share that I've been a product of great mentoring, coaching, and sponsorship, right? All through my career. And one of the ways that I'm looking at it now, just where I am, recognizing where I am in tenure, is that I am now also seeking, I used to seek those that were, that were ahead of me, right? Because, right, I was in achievement mode. But now I'm in bring along mode and, keep that door open. And so I find myself talking, to our younger generations of workers, for several reasons. One is energy, right? It's like they are amazing. Two is insight, right? It's like, what kind of leadership, what kind of supervising, right? How can I be a better leader, a better manager, right? A better supervisor, of the workforce by talking, by listening, right? By really engaging. And then third is, what is the workforce of the future, right? They are going to be the future leaders. And so, like, if we start to map out what do we need to be doing in 5 years, right, in 8 years, in 10 years, so that we leave them the organizations that they would want to inherit versus the ones that they have to fix, is another way that I'm starting to think about it, right? So engaging now, in a multi-generational environment is where I'm starting to put, a lot more effort, because I will go away one day. I want to.
Very good. All right, Yesenia, bring along mode. I love that from our chat. A lot of great and positive comments from our chat. I do want to turn it over. We have about a little under 20 minutes, so I want to dedicate the next 10 or so for Q&A. And I know I have Terry Bennett on the line. Terry, if you can call out any particular themes or trends or questions, if you can message me on those that you'd like me to highlight from trends that you're seeing. Otherwise, I will also scroll through the chat as I've been doing. And then the last 10 minutes, I'd like our panelists to share any closing thoughts, words of wisdom going forward. I do also want to take this opportunity to let our members know, our audience know, that if you go to latinasintech.org, you will find our website for our nationwide organization. Like Juana said, if you're not already registered as a member, please do so. It is free. You can also register as an ally. We also have information for employers. We have a portal where you can tap into for all of the members that are looking for opportunities. So that's another great recruitment tool if you'd like to leverage that. All right, let's take a look at the chat here. Can you give us examples of how you make others feel a sense of inclusion, belonging, and equity on a daily basis in your organizations? Who'd like to start? Chris.
I'll start. So I do, it has to be a conscious effort sometimes, but reaching out to folks, remembering their names, remembering who they are, what they do. If you're in a meeting and you haven't heard from someone, draw them out. You've been quiet. What are you thinking? And making sure people feel valuable or valued and heard. And I think that goes a long way. I think it's something you chip away at every day. It's not like all of a sudden everyone's going to feel this beautiful sense of belonging. But I do think that if you stress how important they are and how aligned their role is with the mission of the department, how you think of them as a human being and care about them, then I think all of that can foster a sense of belonging in the workplace.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else?
I'll share a couple of things that we've done here, just not statewide, but within my department. I have about 300 employees here, and we have done some very specific events. During Pride Month, we had presentation by an individual who represented the LGBTQIA organization here in Sacramento and talked about some of their homelessness outreach and some of their public health programs, and really talked about some of the data around risk of suicide, mental health issues in the community. And some of the individuals who participated talked about family members. And I think that it was so well received. Everyone, and it had some fun moments too. There was some Zoom dancing and you know, showing Pride events across the country and things like that too. So it had some lighthearted moments as well. But the feedback on the event was just so positive that it was the first time that this sort of celebratory event had occurred. And it was really great. I think I didn't hear from anybody who didn't love it. It was so much fun. And it was on Zoom and we had that much fun. So I can only imagine in a couple of years when we do it in person, how much fun it will be. And then we did at the holidays this year, we had an all staff meeting in like mid-December, and we had volunteers who shared how their families celebrate the holidays, what their holiday traditions are. And so we had, I think we had 5 or 6 presenters with very different presentations about the types of celebrations their families take on, which gave us the opportunity to hear about Kwanzaa and just lots of different types of celebrations and what their traditional family Christmas even events were like. And it again was really great and had an opportunity for people to not only hear about something that might have been abstract to them, but to see that their coworker celebrates that way. The person that they know who's in their division that they've worked with for 10 years, that is their family celebration. I think, again, the feedback was just so positive and had everyone feeling very connected, which I think just gets to that belonging question and feeling. And those types of events are really good, fun, and educational ways of making that connection. So just 2 examples of what we've done here.
Thank you.
I'm going to add, just adding adding the vulnerability kind of to the equation, right? We often want to show up and we all want to be our best selves at work, and we, there's still an element, right? Of keep it to yourself, right? And there are appropriate places. I'm not, trying to take judgment out of the equation, but, in the one-on-one sessions with our leaders or with our team, the space to really ask, how are you doing? How are you really doing? And that we share as leaders, right? That space of vulnerability helps our teams understand that we are sincere about this, this journey that we're on together, that we are sincere about creating a culture where we recognize that lots of things are happening, in our lives that, are just unprecedented. And then, kind of bringing on to, onto those team touch points, into those conversations, just a reminder that using the resources that we have available, and this is Chris, I really, and Eraina, right, kind of in your HR, it's like, I've always seen HR as my friend. I don't want to go to HR at the end of the conversation. My mental model was always, I'm going to make them my friend, right? They're gonna, they're not going to be a team of last resort. They are going to be a team of support, and and where we can go for creative thinking about how to address employee issues, right? Versus being feared and kind of that in that space. And so that takes vulnerability. It takes really a lot of honesty and safe space. So how can we show up for one another, truly present for one another, and really sincere about what we believe we can make our workplaces be.
Thank you. All right, and Eraina, I think this one is for you. Where can I find information related to state opportunities, hiring, and programs?
Sure. I'll put the link in the chat.
Thank you. And Christina, we also have interest in the apprenticeship program. So if you'd like to do that as well, that would be great. All right, we're reaching the top of the hour. So I promise to get you all out of here on time. Comment, this is such a powerful conversation, and thank you for sharing your thoughts on this topic. All right, as promised, I do want to give our panelists one last opportunity to share any final thoughts. Who'd like to start?
I'm happy to start. Again, thank you, Cruz and Latinas in Tech, and shout out to our friend Terry Bennett, who brought all these women together. And one of my advocates is actually on the line as well, Mark Noriega from our office in Sacramento. You know, as you go forward and you are the owner of your destiny, I would encourage you to be a continuous learner. You know, there isn't a path, or a plan necessarily, but there's just a journey. And I think if you're going, or if you have an interest in technology, there are a million certifications out there that you can take. You can do an AWS certification online. You could do a search engine optimization online. You know, I think the idea that when you graduated and you had to get a master's or an MBA, really now what's even more critical is that you commit to continuous learning, because things are evolving and changing very quickly. And you can do so in the evenings at your own pace, on the weekends. As you know, my daughter told me, you can learn anything on TikTok. She said, sometimes I wonder why I'm going to college, which is frightening. And I said to her, well, let's try to learn some skills that are applicable to the workforce later on. So I would encourage you to seek out these sort of digital online certification programs, because those are skills that we need, and they will make you current and relevant, you know, out there in the workforce, and continue to work your network. And what I mean by that is, you know, use social media, use LinkedIn. If someone tells you you've done a great job or you're looking for a job, let people know it on LinkedIn. It's a great way to make connections. And thank you for having me on the panel today.
Thank you. Yesenia.
As I say, I'm off of me, I'm ready. I'm going to start with self, right? You know, if I think about just my career journey, you know, it really is starting with self and saying, again, like I shared with you, you know, put myself in the mindset of I can do anything I set my mind to. And so, you know, what are you doing to take care of yourself, right? We know that we give to everyone else, our families, our friends, right, the workplace. And so come back to the moments of how do you feel your own energy, and to think through, you know, if you're holding yourself back, if you have an inclination of I can't, ask yourself, why do you believe, you know, who said that was true? And likely it's only the talk track in your head, because everyone else believes you can move mountains. And so ask yourselves, how are all the ways that you've been conditioned to believe and behave? And ask, is it serving you in the way that you want to move forward? And if it isn't, it is okay to leave things behind. It is okay to leave beliefs behind. It is okay to leave behaviors behind, right? You know, so that you can be, right, you know, kind of in the seat, you know, of owning your own destiny, right? So believe in self, take care of self, leave behind the things that don't serve you, and know that you can do anything that you set your mind to. So courage.
Thank you. Cris.
Hi, thank you. First of all, I want to say how lucky I feel to have been on this panel, because I got to learn from a very important colleague of mine, Eraina, and then to meet Yesenia and Christina with so much insight. And I think I want to work with both of them on some projects. So I'm excited. And thank you, of course, Latinas in Tech and Cruz. You did such a great job today. If I had a platform for people, it is be kind. People are having their own challenges and struggles in life. We don't know what they are. Lend a hand to people, be of service, give people the benefit of the doubt, but realize that we're all, when we work together, we're a team, and teams are supposed to help each other. And to me, that ultimately that human connection is what makes it worthwhile to get up early in the morning to go to work, or else it's just not worth it. But my whole, what I want to leave here with is to encourage people to be an active participant in their career trajectory, to take it on, take control of what it's going to look like. Yes, a lot of it might depend on hiring decisions that you can't influence. Don't be discouraged. Don't give up. Keep trying. I have had spells of time where I have applied and applied and applied for positions and I just didn't get them, only to find out later, wow, there was a reason I didn't get those. And I'm so glad I ended up where I am. So don't be discouraged, be strong. And then let's watch out for each other.
Thank you, Cris. And Eraina.
Thank you. I will echo all the comments about the thanks for the conversation. It's been delightful and just really feel lucky to have met you all for the last hour and a half. Really wonderful. I really like the focus on self and the power that we all have to choose our own paths, and really agree with all of those comments. And I would go back to what I said earlier about if it seems interesting and challenging and you think you might want to do it, go ahead and do it. You will not regret the trying something new, because you can always try the next thing. You will regret what you passed up on, I think. And then to be more self-serving, I would just want to say that there are just so many interesting opportunities in state government. I really encourage you, as Cris mentioned about DMV being a place filled with technology, there's technology everywhere. We're all focused on data and innovation and technology projects and using technology to deliver the services across all different types of policy areas and programs in state government. So don't hesitate to look at all the state opportunities, because there's just no end to the fascinating things that state government is involved in. So lovely to be here. Thanks again.
Thank you. This has been so enjoyable for me. I want to thank Eraina, Yesenia, Cris, and Christina. I also want to thank Terry Bennett. And on behalf of Latinas in Tech, I hope that you can all walk away with a better understanding of this important topic and, really take this as a cue to drive change in this area. So thank you all for joining. Juana, you're on mute.
Of course, right? That never gets old. I just wanted to say quickly before we close off today's event, a quick shout out to all of our amazing panelists today. Just a round of applause to all of you guys. You did an amazing job. And I really do hope that you guys walk away with so much insight. And if you guys are comfortable with sharing your LinkedIn information in the chat, I've seen a lot of women who have been sharing. Please connect with these women. They're amazing, well-connected, intelligent, wise women. So please follow with them. I will encourage you guys to, we do have another event with Accenture coming up next month on February 8th. So I highly encourage you guys to go onto our website and check out that event, which is now live on our website. And again, if you're new to our network and you want to learn more about our Latinas in Tech network, go ahead into our website and log in and create a profile, and that will allow you to be one of our members. And so with that, I'm going to leave it open until our closing time so that you can continue to share your information in the chat. But with that, have a good rest of your evening, guys, or mornings, wherever you're located. And I hope that you have a wonderful weekend. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I'm going to actually add in the chat as well the link to the event that will happen for next week, so you guys can register to that event. Give me 1 second.
And for those that are asking to be part of, to get connected through LinkedIn, will you collect those so that we can send out invites? I've started to see some in my email, but if someone just posted it to the chat, that we collect those so that we can all outreach?
Yeah, absolutely. I can actually share that information with all of you guys after the event.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you. I can't get on video, but I need to drop because I have another client call. But thank you again. You guys were amazing. It was just
Terry,
the
thank
synergy
you.
between all of you is spot on.
Thanks, Terry. Thanks, ladies.
Great
Okay.
idea. Okay.
Hope to
Sign
talk
off.
soon.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Bye.